What's up, Eagles Nation? Good evening to all of you. I hope your day is going great because today we've got another major update involving the future of this team and details that could directly impact next season. So make sure to show your support on the video because what's happening in Philadelphia is starting to get the attention of the entire NFL. And you need to see this right now because the Philadelphia Eagles may have quietly made one of the most important moves of their entire 2026 draft class. And strangely enough, it's a move that a lot of people around the league still are not talking about enough. While everybody continues focusing on the massive conversations surrounding the future of A.J. Brown and the overall direction of this offense, there's another storyline developing inside this organization that could end up shaping the next era of the Eagles' offensive identity. And it starts with rookie tight end Eli Stowers officially signing his rookie contract. The Eagles made it official after rookie minicamp, and now every member of this draft class is under contract except for one remaining rookie. But what makes this situation fascinating is not just the contract itself. It's what Philadelphia clearly believes Eli Stowers can become in this offense moving forward. This is not some random developmental player the Eagles selected late in the draft hoping for a miracle. Philadelphia used the 54th overall pick on him for a reason. They see real upside here, and when you start digging into his background, you understand why the organization became so intrigued by him throughout the scouting process. A lot of fans probably do not realize that Stowers originally came into college football as a highly regarded quarterback prospect. Coming out of Denton Guyer High School in Texas, he was considered one of the better quarterback recruits in the country. He was a 4-star recruit, ranked among the top quarterbacks in his class, and helped lead one of Texas's powerhouse football programs deep into the state playoffs. And anybody who follows high school football knows making a serious playoff run in Texas is not easy. That alone tells you the level of athlete and competitor he already was before changing positions entirely. He originally committed to Texas A&M as a quarterback, but things did not work out there the way many expected. Instead of disappearing from the football world, he reinvented himself completely. He transitioned to tight end at New Mexico State before eventually transferring to Vanderbilt, where everything started coming together for him. That transformation alone says a lot about his mentality because changing from quarterback to tight end at a high level is incredibly difficult. It requires toughness, patience, physical development, and a willingness to completely rebuild your football instincts. And by the end of his time at Vanderbilt, he had developed into one of the most athletic and dangerous tight end prospects in college football. The physical traits immediately stand out. At 6'3" and 239 pounds, Stowers moves more like a receiver than a traditional tight end. His 4.31 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine opened a lot of eyes around the league. That kind of speed at his size is rare, especially when paired with his explosiveness and overall fluidity as a route runner. Some teams reportedly even viewed him more as a wide receiver than a true tight end because of how naturally he moves in space. And honestly, when you watch his tape, it makes sense. He attacks seams aggressively, creates separation naturally, and adjusts to the football extremely well. His catch radius is another major weapon. With nearly an 80-inch wingspan and a 45-inch vertical leap, he consistently wins contested catches and high points the football in traffic. Those are traits that immediately translate to the NFL, especially in the red zone where quarterbacks need reliable targets capable of making difficult grabs in tight coverage. What is also interesting is the connection he built at Vanderbilt with former Eagle Jordan Matthews. Matthews reportedly helped mentor him during his development at tight end, and there's almost a strange parallel between their careers. Matthews himself eventually transitioned from wide receiver to tight end later in his NFL career, so he understood exactly what Stowers was trying to accomplish. That guidance may have helped accelerate his growth tremendously. Then you look at the production and accolades. Stowers won the Mackey Award this past season, given to the best tight end in college football. That is not a small accomplishment. Recent winners include elite NFL talents like Brock Bowers and Trey McBride. The Eagles clearly believe Stowers belongs in that conversation of emerging young talent at the position. But here's where this becomes even more important for Philadelphia moving forward. The Eagles are not drafting him simply to sit on the bench for 2 or 3 years. There's a growing belief that he could become an immediate contributor in this offense, especially with the possibility of major offensive changes still looming around the roster. Philadelphia appears to be building an offense that becomes more versatile, more flexible, and far less dependent on one single superstar receiver carrying the entire passing attack. That is where Stowers becomes incredibly valuable. With new offensive concepts being introduced and the potential for more two tight end formations, his athletic profile creates matchup problems all over the field. He has the ability to line up traditionally, flex outside, attack linebackers, challenge safeties vertically, and create mismatches against smaller defensive backs. That versatility is exactly what modern NFL offenses are searching for right now. And while fans are understandably focused on names like Lane Johnson, Jalen Hurts, and all the major roster headlines surrounding this team, there's a very real chance the Eagles quietly landed one of the biggest offensive steals in this draft. Because if Eli Stowers develops quickly, this offense suddenly gains another explosive weapon capable of changing how defenses prepare for Philadelphia every single week. And the scary part is, this may only be the beginning of what the Eagles are planning offensively moving forward. Do you believe Eli Stowers can become an immediate impact player for Philadelphia in his rookie season, or do you think the Eagles are still planning something even bigger with this offense? What makes this entire situation even more fascinating is that the Eagles were not finished addressing the future of their offensive line either, and there is growing belief inside Philadelphia that the organization may have already identified the eventual successor to Lane Johnson without needing to spend a first-round pick to do it. When the draft first unfolded, a lot of people expected the Eagles to target an offensive tackle much earlier. There were major discussions surrounding prospects like massive franchise-caliber linemen potentially becoming the next long-term answer on the right side of the offensive line. Instead, Philadelphia surprised many people by aggressively moving in a different direction early in the draft, focusing on offensive weapons first. But later in the draft, the Eagles may have quietly found exactly what they were looking for in Marquil Bell out of Miami, and the more you study this pick, the more it feels like classic Eagles roster building. This was not some late round flyer. Philadelphia used the 68th overall pick on Bell, which immediately tells you the organization views him as far more than just a developmental backup. The Eagles do not invest top 70 selections on offensive linemen unless they truly believe those players have future starting potential. That has been consistent throughout the Howie Roseman era, especially when it comes to building the trenches. What stands out immediately about Bell is his physical profile. He is absolutely enormous. At 6'6" and just under 350 pounds with arms longer than 36 inches, he looks exactly like the type of lineman the Eagles love developing. But despite that size, he moves far better than most players built like him should. Running a 5.36 40-yard dash at that size is extremely impressive, and it shows up on film when you watch how smoothly he handles edge rushers in pass protection. Last season at Miami, Bell protected the blind side and quietly put together a very strong year during Miami's run to the national championship. According to the metrics discussed around his season, he did not allow a single sack all year, not one. He surrendered only one quarterback hit and consistently held up against elite competition. That alone explains why the Eagles became so interested. Philadelphia has always believed that great offensive lines sustain championship windows, and even though Lane Johnson is still playing at an elite level, the Eagles understand they eventually need a long-term succession plan. Lane remains one of the greatest right tackles in NFL history, but the organization is clearly thinking several years ahead, exactly like they always do. And here's what makes the comparison even more interesting. Lane Johnson himself played left tackle at Oklahoma before eventually becoming an all-pro right tackle in the NFL. Bell played left tackle at Miami too, so the Eagles already have experience developing players through positional transitions along the offensive line. There is no urgency to rush Bell into the starting lineup immediately, especially with Lane Johnson still anchoring the right side, but Philadelphia now has the luxury of slowly developing him the correct way. That patience matters. The Eagles have consistently been one of the best organizations in football at developing offensive linemen because they do not force young players onto the field before they are ready. Under legendary offensive line coach Jeff Stoutland, players are allowed to grow properly within the system. That environment could be perfect for somebody with Bell's raw upside. And while Bell represents the future, another conversation quietly continues surrounding a familiar former Eagle who still remains available on the market. That name is Mekhi Becton. There is still legitimate discussion about whether a reunion between Becton and Philadelphia could eventually happen, especially after ESPN recently connected the Eagles as one of the best potential potential fits for him. And honestly, when you look at his history in Philadelphia, you can understand why the idea continues surfacing. Becton's career has been one of the strangest roller coasters in recent NFL memory. Originally drafted highly by the Jets, he entered the league with massive expectations because of his rare size and overwhelming physical tools. Early in his career, injuries completely disrupted his development, and eventually New York moved on from him. At that point, many people around the league viewed him as a failed first-round pick whose career might already be spiraling downward. Then Philadelphia took a chance on him before the 2024 season. Initially, the Eagles viewed him mostly as a backup swing tackle option, but everything changed after injuries along the offensive line forced adjustments during training camp. That is when Nick Sirianni and Jeff Stoutland experimented with moving Becton inside to guard, and suddenly everything clicked. He revitalized his career in Philadelphia. Becton became a massive part of the Eagles' dominant rushing attack during Saquon Barkley's historic season. Running behind Landon Dickerson and Becton became a nightmare for opposing defenses because of the sheer physicality Philadelphia brought inside. The Eagles' offensive line overwhelmed teams at the point of attack, and Becton played a major role in that success. That strong season earned him a significant contract opportunity with the Chargers, but unfortunately things quickly unraveled there. His fit within that system never looked comfortable. His performance declined dramatically, and eventually Los Angeles moved on after only one season. Now the question becomes whether Philadelphia should consider bringing him back. And honestly, there are arguments on both sides. The Eagles already invested heavily in offensive line depth this offseason. Between Marquil Bell, Michael Morris, and several other developmental pieces, Philadelphia may already feel comfortable with the current structure of the roster. The team also believes healthier seasons from players like Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens could completely stabilize the unit again moving forward. But at the same time, the Eagles know exactly what Becton looked like when he was thriving inside this system. That familiarity matters. Philadelphia has built one of the strongest offensive line cultures in football, and some players simply fit better here than anywhere else. Becton may genuinely be one of those players. The question is whether the Eagles believe their younger options now provide more long-term value than bringing back a veteran coming off a disappointing season elsewhere. And when you step back and look at everything happening simultaneously, it becomes clear the Eagles are trying to build something much bigger than most people realize right now. They are reshaping the future